Hospital Porter's Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Panwo TV and welcome to this. It's the review section of the watch party for the film Silent Night. As I explained in the introduction, and I do recommend you watch that if you haven't yet. There will be a link in the description box to it. This is a 2021 film, and it is a Christmas film. So basically that's what it is. In its fundamental essence, it is a Christmas film. Now, there are over 200 Christmas films listed on Wikipedia. That is, films, as I explained in the introduction, that have a Christmas theme, and generally are watched at this time of the year. However, this film's very different. It's very seasonal. It's very seasonal in nature indeed, but it is very different to all the others. In fact, all the others that I've seen. In fact, I would. Despite the fact it's a Christmas film, I would actually not recommend this film if you want to inject a bit of Christmas good cheer into your family life. I'd stick to the Muppets Christmas Carol, because this is very unusual. Christmas films tend to be sort of like upbeat. They tend to be cheery, they tend to be sentimental, they tend to be happy, humorous films. This is not. This is a grim, tragic film. Now, it's listed as a black comedy, apparently. It supposedly is a black comedy, but so I've got a lot of notes here. I have loads of notes I've written. I've also got my review that I wrote on Her Panwo Voice for this film, which I'll be referring to every so often, but I will actually be expanding on it in this particular watch party review. It's a grim film. It's tragic. It's actually rather melancholy in many places. It's listed as, even though it is listed as a black comedy. Now, I must admit, it has a few droll moments, but I wouldn't call this a comedy. I didn't find it very funny. I've watched the whole thing 3 times actually, because it's quite a complicated film. And which means that this has been more difficult. It's been more difficult to do this review than it does most films in the watch party. And of course, watching things more than once is actually a good idea, because I tend to see things I didn't notice first time when I watch things more than once. So the film opens with Nell. Nell is the first character you see. Now I suppose there's no hierarchy of characters in this particular film. I mean, the roles are everyone is sort of equal as stars of this film. So there's no like main characters and then supporting characters and things like that. There's only a small number of characters, and they're all sort of equal in terms of their position. So this just explores all their lives. There's I think there's only about 8 or 9 of them. Now, what's interesting is I think there are people listed in the credits as although they're listed on Wikipedia, but I don't see them. I see them, some characters and actors and actresses listed in Wikipedia, and they're not actually in the film. This means they probably played minor roles in scenes in outtakes. So I'd be very interested to see the outtakes actually, to see what they are. Because one of the actresses listed is Holly Aird. Someone who I've always admired. Well, to be honest, I've always had the hots for her, rather. But she was in quite a lot of very interesting films and TV series, going back a long way when I was a little kid, you know. But she's nowhere in this film. But she's listed on Wikipedia, which means there's probably an outtake scene where she's there. But Nell is played by Keira Knightley, who's by far the most prominent thespian in the film. As I said in the introduction, this is an independent film. It's probably quite low budget, I think. She's putting her makeup on and she's getting ready, and she's like putting bunches of mistletoe on people's beds in this big country house. It's like I suppose it's kind of a stately home, maybe slightly smaller. These are clearly posh people. It's hard to place them. I don't think they're aristocrats. There's no one's referred to as lord or lady. But they're clearly quite upper class people, although they swear a lot, and maybe the kids do. The children do as well. I mean, a lot of the acting's good in this, because a lot of the characters are small children, and they swear. They're very foul mouthed for posh kids, I must say. But yeah, So, but then it turns out that the parents have changed the rules to allow their children to swear, and they swear a lot themselves. I suppose that's one of the first indicators something's not quite right, because basically what it looks to, it looks at the beginning like they're just simply arranging a Christmas get together with their friends. The people who live in the house. Well, it turns out later that she borrowed the house from her mother. Nell did, and you do see her mother briefly later on. But you think the problem is that the people who live there are Nell, her husband Simon, and they have three children. They have a boy called Art, and they have two younger twin boys called Hardy and Thomas. And these are actually all brothers in real life. They're all, as I said in the introduction, they are actually the children of Camille Griffin Davis, or Camille Griffin and her husband Ben Davis. And so this is kind of like a family project, I suppose. The director and writer has cast her own family, her own children in the film, which is probably a good idea. I mean, it probably makes it easier to get them to act and things like that. But the boys, these young boys, and something's not quite right. It seems all right. To begin with, everything seems happy. Nell is like looking at photos. She's got a photograph from the previous Christmas of all the friends who are on their way. All the friends are coming. There will be spoilers, by the way. This is going to be a deep dive into this film. And there's a photograph of them on her mantelpiece where she's doing her makeup nearby. She looks at it and she smiles. And you see them all there wearing these these jumpers, these Christmas sweaters. And at the same time, she's listening to the radio, and you were listening to the Christmas Sweater song by Michael Bublé. It's put your Christmas sweater on, and at the same time in the prologue, you then cuts to shots of people in cars, and you introduced to the other characters, those who are all coming to this get together. So there's Niall and Simon, and Art, the oldest boy, who's probably the most interesting character actually. He cuts his finger and he's cutting the carrots, and he swears, "Oh fuck, shit, fuck," and things like that, and bleeds on the carrots. And then he asks his mother, "Will I die?" And she says, "Probably," which is an odd thing for a mother to say to a boy. I'd say he's 9 or 10 years old. The twins are probably about a year or two younger. And you suddenly realise something's not quite right. There's some sinister. You immediately get a feeling that all is not as it seems, as it should be. So, for example, Simon is in the garden. Nell looks out the window, and Simon is in the garden. He's in the. They have like a little kitchen garden in this big house, and there's a hen coop or chicken coop, and Simon's trying to catch one of the chickens, or a couple of them, and you see, well, you probably think, oh, he's trying to capture one for the pot because they're having a Christmas roast. Yeah, and you see, these country folk, they have to do this sort of thing themselves. We go and we buy our meats in nice plastic wrappers in freezers, But in the country, they actually have living animals in their kitchen gardens, and they have to catch them and they have to kill them. It's a bit more honest, I think, than. I suppose if a lot of vegetarians will say, well, blah, 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 but it is more honest, to be honest. It's honest to be honest. Yes, it is. And then they turn up. The family, the other people turn up. There's 3 cars of people, and there's Tony and Sandra. Now Sandra is Nell's sister, and Tony is her husband. He's a bit of a spurg, this guy. He's quite likable, but he's a bit Edward Dutton. He says what he thinks and just doesn't care. But what's interesting is they say How's Sleeping Beauty. They got a daughter called Kitty, and How's Sleeping Beauty. You look on the back seat, and Kitty is lying there asleep on the back seat. She's a girl about Art's age, and she's lying there, and she has an apple, which she's taken a bite out of, and it's like, Or Well, obviously it's a different fairy tale. That's actually from Snow White, but how's Sleeping Beauty? And then she's lying there, and she's got an apple. She's taking a bite out of it. Well, of course that is reminiscent of Snow White, isn't it? And that's a sinister thing to see this girl lying there, apparently asleep, with taking a bite out of this apple. And it gets, because then when you wonder, well, is she really asleep? And then when one of the other characters comes up and says, one of the other characters turns up and asks Nell, "Oh, is Tony sad? Have they brought Kitty, or have they already put her down?" And you think, what? "Oh, no, of course they're bringing her," says Nell. And I think, oh, right. And you say, "What do they mean, put her down?" You get it's nothing's explained to you. It's not explicit, but you get the feeling something's not quite right. The other character is interesting. That the second carload of people is actually two. It's two women who are a lesbian couple. There's Bella and Alex. Now it's interesting that, as I said, Bella is played by someone called Lucy Punch, and I must say she's a very impressive actress, and her acting and characterization is probably one of the best things in this film. Her character Bella is very charismatic. She's very, very likable, funny, original character, very, very well developed character. And she's got this amazing. She talks in this amazing accent. I mean, they're all quite, like I said, they're all sort of upper class. They all talk in sort of like RP posh accents. But Bella's is like, her voice is just amazing. I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure it's put on by the actress doesn't actually speak like that, but it's very, very well done. She goes, "I've watched The Road, and there's no fucking way I'm living like that." And she speaks like that, and she's really, really great. And her partner is a much more introverted, demure woman. But when they turn up, they say something. Nell is admiring their clothes and say, "Where did you get it?" And they say, "Oh, of course we stole it, didn't we?" And Bella says, "I had an argument with an Arab lady, but and Nell says, "You should have stolen something for Alex." And Alex says, "I don't mind." And Alex has a black eye. That's what? And yeah, and Bella says, "I had to punch a lady in a burqa, very un-PC of me." And I thought, what's going on? What's going on? And then they start talking about the dinner, and oh no, we haven't got. Nell says, "We haven't got sticky toffee pudding." Kitty will be so disappointed. We promised a sticky toffee pudding. And he said, "Oh, Waitrose was empty." You think they're talking about shopping, going and buying stuff from shops, but they're not, because then she says, "Oh, why don't you go to the local go to the local garage? There's a shop there. They might have it." And she says, "It'll be closed, won't it?" She says, "Yeah, but And then they turn up later. I actually included a still of this in the introduction. You see it in the trailer. They've got the sticky toffee pudding, and there's a baseball bat and broken glass in the van with them. So, which indicates they've broken into this closed shop to get the sticky toffee pudding. So what's going on? What the hell's going on? It's like just. Well, yeah, I'll look every so often because I've got OBS running, because I'm doing my new setup here, having OBS, the webcam and everything here, because it reaches from the computer. And then the third car turns down. This is James and Sophie. Now James is he's a black guy, but he's one of these very sort of Flash Harry type black guys. He drives what I think it's a Bugatti. He's driving a very, very nice sports car, very sort of grand sports car, and he's a man probably around 40, but he's got a woman with him. Who's his new, apparently recently married wife, and she's they speculate on how old she is. She's clearly very young, and Nell and the others say, "Is she 15? No, of course she's not 15. But she's this is Lily Rose Depp's character, who is certainly in her early 20s, no older than her early 20s. And as a result, she builds something of an affinity with the children. She spends most of her time with the children, who are not much younger than she is. But she's with this older man, and I think if you can afford a Bugatti, you can. Well, I don't want to sound vulgar, but you can like pull anything, can't you? If you've got affordable get Bugatti. But he turns out he's a doctor. He's an oncologist, James. And then they ask him, "Oh, did you put the patients down?" I mean, what? But did you in other words, did you euthanize the patients? Which of course doesn't happen. Well, it does happen actually, but what are they talking about? You don't normally ask a doctor that. Was it difficult putting the patients to sleep, putting them down? Oh, what's going on? So you realise there's something a bit strange going on. There's this dark atmosphere over hanging over the place. And do you know what? I do get the sense that because there's a lot of the joviality, what's it, joviality among the people. There's a lot of joviality among the all the time. But you get the sense. You get the sensation. I do get the sense that their frivolity, their happiness is very forced. It's like they're like the band playing on the Titanic. It's like they're in denial of something really terrible. They play charades. They do play Christmas games like charades, and they dance. They have a little mini disco in the lounge, things like that. And then you think, what's going on? But it gets a little bit. And then she said, "Oh yes, well Sandra. When Sandra turns up, she's wearing these very expensive shoes." And she said, and Nell says, "Where'd you get those?" And she said, "Oh, it's Kitty's university fund." So she's blown a huge amount of money on very, very grand clothes. And Kitty actually, like Kitty, you can see feels a lot of hostility for her mother, Sandra. And later on, she actually says, "You're wearing my education on your feet." And Kitty, and then Sandra says to Kitty, "You don't need it. You're not going to need it now, are you?" And I thought, what? This comes after the remark where Art asks, he's bleeding, and his mother says, she says, "Will I die?" And he says, "Probably." And I get the enormous, you get this. There's a lot of mystery. I think there's very, very well created mystery and intrigue in this film. It is dealt with a bit of dark humour in certain places, but it's dealt with. It's addressed very well. Sorry. I need some kind of table for my notes because I've got my phone here and I've got my exercise book here I've written with pen and paper. Yeah, pen and paper. Pen and paper. Do you remember? Anyone younger than me is going, "What's a pen and paper?" It's a pen. Look, that's paper. All right, got it, kids. But yeah, I've made a lot of notes on here, so I'm going to go through as many of them as I can. Sandra clearly feels a lot of, well, her daughter Kitty feels a lot of hostility for her mother, and you can clearly see Sandra, though, is also very flirty with James. Now, these are people who have known each other since they were little kids. They went to school together, presumably to some posh boarding school, which must have been co-ed. It's unusual for boarding schools to be co-educational for boys and girls. Most of them are either for boys or for girls. You get Eton for boys, Rodine for girls, etc., etc. They clearly know each other they've known each other since they were at school. And Sandra is very flirtatious with James, but Tony doesn't seem all that bothered. I say Tony is a little bit detached. He's sort of somebody quite likeable. He's a jolly, sort of rather slightly overweight chap. But you can see he's slightly detached from things. He sometimes says tactless things. A lot of the time he's corrected or admonished by the other characters for saying something that's a little bit thoughtless. Through no fault of his own. I mean, the thing about autistic people is they don't mean to harm. They don't mean any harm when they say things which you'd otherwise consider somewhat au fait. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. Au fait. I'm being pretentious by using these words, which I don't necessarily know what they mean. Del Boy Trotter. Yeah, that's bonnet de douche. That is. No, I mean slightly offhand. My dad's a bit like that. Actually, I think my dad is a bit autistic. Actually, but then they have dinner, and the awkwardness continues at dinner, and you can see they again it's forced. And I've known people so often that do this. In the face of something terrible, they will. And this occurs within my family. In the face of something terrible, they'll just say, "Well, the show must go on, and we got to keep acting. We got to keep acting like nothing's wrong." And this has happened in my family as well. Not for anything as serious, obviously, as what's in this film, but for other things. A bit of the old dragon juice. Funnily enough, some of them act in contradictory ways. When Alex arrives, she asks for a glass of sparkling water, like she's a teetotaler. But then she gets blisteringly drunk. She swigs from bottles and things like that, and gets totally and utterly wrecked, and ends up in a drunken stupor. I remember that. But they say things like there's only one potato each because, as Nell says, Waitrose was empty. Previously, other people presumably have looted it because you're pretty clear that there's looting going on. They didn't buy these things. Simon and Tony didn't. They had to break into the garage shop to get the sticky toffee pudding because. So what's going on? Why are these shops shut? Why do they have to break into shops and get the stuff? They've looted these things. Why? And this is a question. And they say, and then they ask the usual Christmas things. They're sitting eating Christmas dinner, and somebody asked, "Anyone seen the Queen's speech?" And Tony said, "I did. Yeah, she's obviously in some kind of bunker. You can see cans of food in the background and lots of dog food, of course, and." And she's not going to eat that, is she? And they say, and they joke about, "Oh no, I'm sure that's for the corgis." And she said, "Oh, and things like that. So the dog food is for the corgis, dear." They've said this several times. But why is the Queen doing her speech from a bunker? I wonder why. It's obviously this film was made before the Queen went to that great vivarium in the sky. So it is the Queen, not the King Charles. But now there's an awkward scene where Simon says grace, and Simon is like he's probably the one, he's the person most in denial. He's like the great you see, he reminds me a bit of my dad, although my dad's not posh. But he reminds me a little bit of my dad. When we're at sort of social events with a family, my dad always. And it annoys me actually. But he acts as the kind of referee of every conversation. He says, "Okay, no, we're not going to talk about that. No, we're going to talk." And someone says something. If things get a bit heated, he goes, "Oh God," like that. And that annoys me. And Simon, I found a bit of an annoying character, I must say. He says grace, "Dear Lord, for what we're about to receive," and he goes on, "Thank you for our friends and for our wonderful chef, my beautiful wife, and all our wonderful children," all these sorts of things. He goes on like this while he's saying grace. And now there's a scene now in the trailer. You've probably seen the trailer. I'm not going to put it in the bloody film, in the video, because you always get stupid third-party strikes for that, which is it just shows how AI is, because the whole point of a trailer is it's free distribution. But you see her go. Nell raises her glass and says, "And may we, after the end, and may we rest in peace." We're going to die. This is cut from the actual feature of the film, the actual feature cut. This is not included in the feature cut, because I suppose it's a little bit too much of a giveaway, isn't it? But it's in the trailer. And then it is revealed that exactly what is going on. You find out exactly what it is. It turns out that the Earth has been struck down by some kind of catastrophic environmental disaster, and this is the cause of it is never fully explained, but it's very much implied that it's a result of human abuse of the environment. And this all comes up at the dinner table, and there's a lot of anger among the children and the young, and Sophie, of course, she's a lot younger than she's an awful lot younger than the rest of them. The others around the table, I'd say, are in their early 40s, late 30s to early 40s. Sophie's in her early 20s. and so she has more in common, I think, with the children. Especially her attitude is more in common with the children. I mean, a generational conflict and generational difference is a huge theme in this film. Um, and then it all comes, and it all mentions, and you get hints, like for example, when they're all opening their presents, the presents are wrapped in newspaper, and Art is like reading the headlines which talk about toxic gas clouds and things like that. And it turns out what's happened is there is a cloud of toxic gas which is flooding, which is filling the atmosphere of the Earth. It's moving across the surface of the Earth, killing everything in its wake. And the death is apparently very painful. It involves hemorrhaging, nervous system failure, organ failure, things like that. And one of the Kitty says, "Oh, it's Russians doing it," and of course Russians get blamed for everything these days, don't they? Russians, Russians, Russians. But and then Art says, "No, it's the Earth is spitting back, is spitting out all the poisons that we've put into it. Greta warned us," he says, mentioning Greta Thunberg. "She spent all that time missing school and getting seasick on a boat," because of course Greta did sail a boat at one point, I think across the Atlantic Ocean when she was like 15, Greta Thunberg. And later on, one of the characters, there's one of my favourite bits of dialogue is Lucy Punch's character Bella and Sandra, and they say, "We should have voted Green, fucking Conservatives." Again, it's implied that this is, well, even though the cause is not fully explained, it's implied that this toxic gas is caused by humans' abuse of the environment, and there is this sense of guilt. I mean, at one point Nell says she sits down, has one of her like adult to children talks, and she says, "I hope you realise, look, it's not our fault. It's not our fault." And of course, the children are very, very the children are very, very very much, they're much more grounded about this and much more aware than the adults, as is often the case. I'll come on to that again later, but Kitty says at least our government has a plan. But the plan, it turns out, I mean, now one of the things they're not allowed to do is Google. The kids are not allowed to Google, but Art has his mobile phone under his pillow and he keeps getting it out. And he goes to a website called exit.gov.co.uk. Now, there's no such website as that. There's a exit.gov.uk, and I actually googled that just to see what would come up, and it was, believe it or not, it's the government's Brexit page, which is now defunct because Brexit's happened apparently. I'm not going to get into Brexit today, but that's what it's called, Exit. And what it is, it talks about this gas cloud and what happens when the gas hits you and you breathe it in, and it causes this agonising, prolonged death. The government has given every single person a poison capsule. It's interesting, the design of it. It's in like a big red box, and red, of course, is always used for danger in the hospital. The color code in red was always like a sign of danger or a sign of emergency stuff. There was the red emergency drugs box, and there was the green one for drills and things like that. Hospital porters know what I'm talking about. The rest of you don't. There's just like these little red packets. They look like chewing gum packets. You open them up and there's like a little pill in a plastic bubble, in a plastic blister, and you push it out like you do pills in blisters. A little red capsule. It looks like the one in the Matrix. You just take that, and it gives you a quick and painless death. And the government has donated these out, saying, and it says on this website that Art is looking at, and you hear a voice saying, "Don't delay. Take your pill. Don't suffer. Take your pill. Die with dignity." And so that's what happened. You suddenly realize that is what's going on. That is the whole. This is the scenario they're in. This explains everything that's happened before. They've made a pact. These friends. To get together, have one last Christmas party, and then on the following day, Boxing Day, the gas cloud hits. And they're all dead, and they're going to die. The gas cloud will hit, and they have to take. They agree to get together and take their pills before that happens. But they don't want to talk about it. They're just acting as everything. Apart from the children, Sophie, they're all acting like everything's normal. They're just acting. They're in denial. They're the band playing on the Titanic. I think this book is actually this. I believe this film is very loose. It's loosely based on a book. and it's an interesting book actually. Now, this is a book called On the Beach by Nevil Shute, and you can get the book. I don't think it's ever been made into a film, or it's never been adapted for cinema or TV. I don't think, but the book is worth reading. It's very depressing. I think this film is actually based on that. I don't. It doesn't say actually on Wikipedia or anything. This film is loosely based on Nevil Shute's On the Beach, but the plot is very very similar. In On the Beach is a book that was written by Nevil Shute. Nevil Shute was an English guy. He ended up living in Australia. I think he spent the last part of his life in Australia. And On the Beach is based in. It is actually set in Australia, and it was written in sometime in the 1950s. It was published, and it was inspired by the Bikini Atoll nuclear disasters, the nuclear tests, because America was testing thermonuclear hydrogen bombs at a place called Bikini, and it's got you see Bikini has got it's actually nothing to do with women's beachwear. It's actually a place, Bikini. And to this day, it's actually still you can't if you catch fish in the areas around that island, you can't sell them. I mean, there's local people have moved back in now after all these years, because this was like the early 1950s. But the radiation level was so high, for decades no one could go and live there. No one could even go to those islands, because the bombs were even bigger than the bombs actually ended up being much bigger than anyone thought. And some of the testing scientists almost got killed when they were testing these bombs. And a Japanese fishing boat got hit by a radioactive blast. And I think this is what inspired Nevil Shute to write this book. The story in the book is actually very similar to Silent Night, except it's more drawn out and it's even darker. There's been a massive nuclear war across the world between Soviets, USA, and Cold War rivals. And this has resulted in a massive cloud of radioactive fallout. Now, Australia hasn't been touched by this war. However, this cloud of radioactive toxin is filling up the atmosphere, and it's heading for Australia. And as a result, you see behaviour among the people which is very, very similar. They go into denial. Like one of the characters is American. He's like a submarine captain, and he's sort of fled from the war and sort of moored his submarine in Australia. And he and his crew, like, they write letters to their family, they write letters home to their family, and they put them in post boxes and things like that. And they buy presents for their children. They know that their wives and their children are dead. They know that their parents are dead. But they still keep acting normally. They keep acting as if they're still alive. And they do reckless things as well, like they have motor car racing where they take stupid risks, and a couple of people get killed in every motor race, but they don't care anymore because they know they're all going to die. And when the submarine eventually goes back to the United States to see if anyone's left alive, because they're getting this mysterious radio signal, it turns out the radio signal is simply like there's like a Morse code thing, and there's I think there's a piece of the windowsill has come loose, and it's tapping the keys and things like that. And they go there, they find there's no one left alive. And then one of the crew, he leaves the submarine, he gets in a boat and starts fishing. And they're in the submarine because it's radiation proof. But the captain speaks to him through a loudspeaker and says, "We can't let you back on the boat now. You got out of the boat. You're going to have to stay out and die." And he says, "I know. I just wanted to. This is where I used to live, and I just wanted to go have one last go at fishing." And he's sitting there in a boat with his fishing rod, and he knows very well there are no fish there. They're all dead. The fish are all dead. Everything and everyone is dead. But it's this acting normal in the face of this horrific. This is the denial reflex, which is something, like I said, I've observed it so many times in my family. My dad. My dad is in denial about things like Centaur. I mean, I've talked before about Centaur. This man who abused me when I was a child. My dad is in denial about that. He still is. My dad's now. He's 72. He's getting old now, but he still doesn't. He's still in denial. He knows it intellectually, but he's pushed it out of his mind. And I see that in these characters. Simon especially is like my dad in that respect. and he's trying to referee every conversation. He does more than anyone else to try and maintain normality and stop people arguing, because they bicker at the dinner table. Sophie in particular is very belligerent. She attacks Kitty because Kitty says, well, the Queen's an old lady, so what if she's dead? And Sophie says, well, do you think someone's dead? Do you think it's just because someone's dead they're old? Or do you think someone's old, their life doesn't matter? And Simon goes, oh God, please, just leave it, let's not... And things like that. And of course, it turns out Sophie's pregnant, you see. Sophie's pregnant. James and Sophie were going to have a baby. It's there's a lot of irony, like ironic statements like this. Nell says, "Oh," to James once, "Oh, James, we're getting old," and he says, "Well, we were getting old." Things like that. But on the beach, is and the reason, and the main reason I think On the Beach is very similar to Silent Night, is that the government, the Australian government, issues people poisoned pills as well. Everyone gets a poison pill, and the government say, well, you have the option. You can either die of radiation poisoning, which is not pleasant. Curie fever is very, very nasty. But I've seen people with radiation, people who've had radiotherapy. Their hair falls out, and their skin breaks, their skin turns into lesions, they vomit, they have diarrhea, things like that. It's not nice. And people who experience radioactive fallout, like you saw at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they also experience those same symptoms, and it's very, very unpleasant. It's a horrible. If you get a very big dose of radiation, you do die, and it's very unpleasant. And again, the government says you can either wait it out and put up with that, or we recommend you take these poison pills and commit suicide. It's in a fast, painless manner. As I said, it's worth reading that book. I said there's no film of it, unfortunately. I think it's never been made into a film or TV show, but this book is. But I must say, the book is dystopian. It's post-apocalyptic, and it is apocalyptic, and it's a very disturbing thing to read. It's very upsetting, and then Nevil Shute must have been dumped by his girlfriend or something when he wrote that book. Because I couldn't write something like that. It would just. I do have sadness, and I do have tragedy and horror in my fiction, as you know if you've read my fiction. However, I can't put anything. I can't put something as melancholy and pessimistic down on paper as this, because it ends sadly. It doesn't end happily. That's it. On the Beach. So it's worth reading. If you be prepared, if you read the book, that's what it's like. There's an interesting scene. Now they play, like I say, they play charades. But at one point, the men go to the greenhouse and kind of have a blokey conversation. They're in the greenhouse, but they're smoking cannabis, and it's quite funny because they're getting high. And Tony becomes even more spurgy when he's on cannabis and things like that. And James is like really upset because then he tells them about the baby. That Sophie's having a baby, and he talks more about having to kill the patients and stuff like that. When they give out the presents, Kitty refuses to give her mother a hug, and it's you can see there's the generational conflict is very clear here. It's kind of three generations we're talking about here. We're talking about the main characters, the adults who say they're sort of early middle age, and then there's the children, and there's Sophie who's a young adult, who's in her early 20s, I would say. And you get this in a lot of dystopian fiction. Actually, you have like there's the symbol of the innocence of youth. In the film, it reminded me a little bit of the film called The Day the Earth Caught Fire. Again, this is that's a very, very good dystopian film. Actually, it's a very well scripted film. Again, it has light-hearted, comedic, almost also very ironically humorous moments. But it is about, again, a nuclear test that causes the Earth to move towards the sun, and eventually they say it will get burned up in the sun. However, at one point, they have a plan possibly to save it by detonating another nuclear bomb at a certain place, which will push the Earth back into its normal orbit. However, the end of the film is really amazing. The film is left inconclusive. It's set in a newspaper office. The main character is a newspaper. It's a newspaper writer. It's something again. I think it's from 1950s. It's black and white from 1950s or early 60s, I'd say. And it ends with you see the two headlines they've prepared for the end of this test. Earth, and one says Earth saved, the other says Earth doomed. And then it immediately cuts to credits. You never find out what happens. But yeah, there's a couple of scenes in this film where you get the sense of the innocence of youth. For example, even though it's not certain they're all going to die, they have a plan to save the Earth. You get people go crazy, have wild parties, like the characters in Silent Night, like the characters in On the Beach. They go wild and crazy. They have wild parties and things like that where people get killed. They overdose on drugs and stuff. And but you get scenes like in one scene where there's a massive when the Earth starts to heat up as it gets closer to the sun. You see a massive cloud and there's a huge fog that envelops all of London. It's all set in London, and you see you hear a child crying, can't find his mother. A little child about 5 years old crying because they can't find their mother, and it's obviously symbolic of the innocent victims who are children. And yeah, you get this sense in Silent Night, definitely. But there's then this sense, there's this absolute sense that there's something, there's doubt has been raised about the whole scenario. And this is where it gets very interesting. This is why I think Jam Noise 72 brought this to my attention. Jam Noise actually didn't tell me exactly why she wanted me to watch this film, but I suspect this is the reason why. There's a lot of the characters suddenly you find that some of the characters are starting to doubt things, like in this amazing conversation Bella has with Sandra. She says, Sandra asks her, "Do you trust the government?" Bella says, "Fuck no, they killed Diana." So this brings up the idea that Princess Diana was killed by the government, which of course is something that I believe is the case. And I've said so many times, and it alludes to the fact that Bella at least is willing to entertain some conspiracy theories, and you never find out much about that from Alex, her partner. Alex is actually, is it Kirby Howell Baptiste is the actress who plays her, a black woman. I should point out that. One question I expect some of you are going to ask me: is this film woke? Is it politically correct? Is it full of cultural Marxism? The answer is no, it's not. It has like I said, it has this diversity in it. For example, you have the homosexual couple Bella and Alex, which is also an interracial couple. You also have James and Sophie. Sophie's white, so that's another interracial couple. But really, you don't. I would say it's not woke. It didn't bother me at all because it's not woke. You don't find, for example, you don't find people of the wrong race playing a character they wouldn't play if they were because of their racial identity. So, for example, you wouldn't see. Well, I can't think of an actual example in this film, but if it was a historical drama and there was a Queen of England from the 14th century, it was like Elizabeth I or something being played by a black actress, which of course is completely wrong, as I've said many times. There's nothing like that. The people are where they're meant to be. James is, as I said, he does come across as like a lot of these sort of very sophisticated black guys, and they tend to be a bit, these very sort of like middle-class black guys. They tend to be quite showy. I've noticed they tend to be quite pretentious and a bit showy, and he has this car, which I think it's a Bugatti. I think, like I said, this very grand car. He dresses very sort of like in a very well. He's a doctor too, and doctors also tend to be a bit like that. Doctors of all colours. But it's not really the racial background of the characters is almost never referred to. I mean, at one point you find out that Sandra mentions that when she met James, because Sandra obviously has the hots for James and is flirting with him. She says, "Oh, you turned up from Nigeria with your school fees in a suitcase," and that's the only time that because apparently James comes from Nigeria. The actor playing him, Sopa Dirisu, actually is Nigerian, from a Nigerian family, and that's the only time his racial background is even referred to. So no, it's not woke. It's not woke at all. It's perfectly, it's perfectly in line with, as to quote Martin Luther King, people being judged by the content of their character and not the colour of their skin. So no, it's if you find it very cringy when there's woke stuff in films, I don't think this will bother you. It won't bother you at all. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it in that respect. There was yeah, Bella. They killed Diana. Yeah, she's very aware, but that's just the start of it. Because then Art is looking for advice, and obviously he's finding his parents increasingly irritating, and he tells his parents he doesn't want to take this pill. He says he doesn't want to take it, and they desperately try to force him to take it. They say, you've got to take it, you can't. And there's this, it's actually quite an upsetting thing to see, because the parents are like, they're obviously trying to hold it together. They're trying to hold their own sanity together at the same time as they're saying, you've got to take this pill, and things like that. And she says, I'm not going to leave you, and think, I'm not going to. And then the mother says, I'm not going to leave you. But then she says, but you will be taking it and you'll be left alone crying, which is, I think, a rather nasty thing to say to a child. But she's desperately trying to force him into this position. But then Art goes on and sees James. I think he looks to James for support, because this guy's a doctor. And she says, you know about death and things like that? And he says, yeah, because he's an oncologist. And he says, well, what if the experts are wrong? Or what if the experts who know they had a day off and they got it wrong? And he says, no, Art, you've got to trust us. And it's amazing this script came out in the middle of the old C-word pandemic. You've got to trust the science. I think James actually says at one point, trust the science. What? I think he actually uses that word. It's a kind of childlike logic, and Art says, well, I don't want to take the pill because it could be wrong. Maybe the poison gas won't kill us. Maybe it's not really. Maybe the government have made a mistake. And maybe it's not just a mistake. But anyway, I'll come to that later. But it's interesting that just checking, everything's still working. Yes, it's still recording. The Art says this. It's interesting that Art is actually starting to doubt things. Obviously, he's been watching the news. He's been Googling when his parents told him not to. So he's been doing a lot of homework. This is like a kid about 9 or 10. And he seems to have some kind of awareness that things might, again, there's another twist, things might not be as they seem in terms of what's really going on. We know this cloud of gas exists because we actually see it. There's some scenes where you see this cloud, it's wafting across the countryside, it's like a huge storm cloud, it's going along the streets and along railway lines and things like that. You see these little twisters, these little mini tornadoes that precede the arrival of it. And at one point, Art runs off into the woods outside the house, and he actually encounters one of these twisters, which is like the small pockets of the gas before the main ones arrive, and he is actually injured by the gas. So he's injured by something, because he has blood on his face. He becomes unconscious. His father has to carry him home, and you see blood on his face. But it's like, so James is doing this adult thing with him and saying, you've got to trust the experts, trust the science, believe me. The government has looked into this, and they know what they're doing. And he's saying, well, what if they're wrong? He talks about my maths teacher made a mistake and had to apologise to one of the kids. He's an expert, he's a maths teacher, but he made a mistake and things like this. And then Art is like almost intuitively, he knows not to take this pill, and he says he's not going to take this pill. And then Sophie comes and tells him that she's not going to take the pill either, and that makes her mother very, very angry with Sophie for doing that. And this is it's children. You see, children have a natural logic to them, a natural You know, logic and reason is something that children you're born with. I mean, Stephen Molyneux's made this point many times. Um, your kids don't need to be taught it. For example, I mean, the classic example, of course, is the father sits down with his son to have a very serious father to son discussion. He's trying, son, come here, sit down a minute, sit down a minute. Now, he gets out a cigarette, lights it up. So he's smoking a cigarette, and he says, son, I need to have a very serious talk with you. When you grow up, right, you must never smoke. It's really bad for you. It's unhealthy, it's smelly, and it's horrible, okay? So don't ever smoke when you grow up. And the kids look at him and saying, but Dad, you're doing it. You're doing it. And he says, yes, I know I'm doing it, son, but, you mustn't. And the kid is going, but Dad, why are you doing it if it's bad? If it's a bad thing, why are you doing it? Son, and the father's going saying things like, look, son, look, just focus on what I'm saying. Forget what I'm doing. Just focus on what I'm saying, okay? When you grow up, you mustn't smoke. But Dad, you're doing it. Why are you doing it if it's bad? And see, no one teaches the child that. That comes naturally. That is reason. That is logic. You see, that is natural logic, which comes to a child inherently. It's something the child is born with because they have a working brain. The whole purpose of our brain is to spot things like this and work them out for ourselves. Children don't need to be taught logic and just to spot things that kind of hypocrisy. Well, in fact, children, a lot of education and peer pressure and parental indoctrination is actually forcing the child to ignore things like that. So that when they come out of school as an adult, they encounter these kinds of double standards all the time, and they just look the other way or they just shrug their shoulders. That's what has to be taught. That's what has to be taught. This is why they get angry with people like me, because when I point these things out. When Art runs away, there's a very disturbing scene. Firstly, he sees one of the chickens, which his dad threw out, because you think the dad. I should point out, don't think I complete this point. You think Simon is he's running around grabbing chickens in the pen and trying to grab one, and Nell is looking out the window smiling with amusement. You think he's grabbing one for the pot, but he picks it up and he says, "Fly away!" and he throws it over the fence. He's setting the chickens free. And you find out later, we thought it'd be kinder to let the foxes have them. And Art sees one of the chickens there. It's called Belinda, and he says, "Oh, hello, Belinda." And then there's a very disturbing scene. There's no doubt. You see, there on one level, you see there is some reality behind this. For some reason, Art sees a parked car, and in the car there are 3 adults and 2 children. The children are very young, they're like little babies, and they're all dead. They've all taken the pills, and you see like the packets of the pills. You see the open packets of pills all dotted all around on the dashboard. And they're listening on the car radio. Is that Michael Bublé song playing? Put your Christmas sweater on. And Art screams, and you don't know if it's because of the twister that's there, or you don't know if it's the twister. It may be the sight of this family have just killed themselves, and indeed Simon is also traumatized by what he's seen. He carries Art back, and Art, of course, has this blood, and you think on his face. You don't know if he's alive or dead at that point, but he has this blood on his face. You don't know what the cause of it is, but you assume it's the gas. And at that point, the reality sort of hits home, and they're all dancing and frolicking, and then someone says, well, the gas isn't arriving until tomorrow, and then one of the characters says it is tomorrow and points at the clock. It's actually 20 past midnight. It's early hours of Boxing Day. And then they take the pills, and it's like I find that act hard to. I find it hard to watch, actually. The bit where they are taking the pills, because there is a kind of like a black humour involved. So, for example, the kids. The 2 boys, Hardy and Thomas, want a glass of Coke to swallow their pills, and their dad brings them a can of Coke, and he says, "Oh, hang on, it's warm." And he says, "All right," and he goes and gets some ice to put in the glass, and they say, "Oh, Dad, You know, they keep making excuses, and they say, "Oh, Thomas has got more than me," and things like that, and so he has to keep going back and getting more cans of Coke, and then they call Nell's mother. Now, this Nell's mother actually owns the house, so they phone her on Skype or Zoom or some kind of internet phone, video phone, and she's played by Trudy Styler, who she's quite famous a while ago. She's been in a lot of films. She's like an old actress. She's been in loads of films from the 70s and things. She plays the mother, called Nicole. That's Helen Nell's mother, who's this sweet old lady, and but she's a long way away, and it's her house. They've allowed that but she's actually staying a long way away, and the gas cloud gets to her first. But it's actually quite sad. They're sort of talking jovially on Skype and with all the family around the laptop, and she says, "I've got to Zoom the Bridge Girls now." It's just like, that's so sort of like middle class, you know. It's just, I think it's kind of a joke, but then she hangs up, and you see the gas cloud. You see her. There's a scene in her home where the gas cloud is approaching, and she takes her pill with a glass of wine. And an artist saying, "Call Grandma back, call Grandma back." He's obviously very fond, and Simon says, "No, no, we mustn't, no." And that's final. And of course, Simon is again trying to maintain calm. Trying to maintain this sort of normality, and which, of course, as I said, I find that irritating. So the grandma takes the pill just before the gas gets to her. And it's all very. I'm just going through my notes. Sorry. So I think they one by one. You know, they all take the pill. Sophie and James take the pill. Well, it's all very romantic, because they pull out their red pills, and then James puts it in Sophie's mouth, and Sophie puts it in James' mouth, and they kiss, and then they die. And they stop every so often and say, "I haven't said goodbye to so and so. I haven't said goodbye to so and so." They say, "Now come on, get on with it." It's actually a heartrending scene. Like I said, if you want Christmas cheer, this is not the film for you. But it's like a lot of there's scenes in on the beach like that. There's scenes in on the beach like that. Funnily enough, you wonder, like, there seems to be, you see, there's no picture, you never see, apart from the newspaper headlines, you never see anything of what's going on in the world. Nobody watches TV. No one puts the TV on except to watch E.T. They watch the film E.T., which is interesting. Which is presumably a DVD or something. But no one watches the news. You just see, you just see Art's Googling with his phone, and you see the headlines of the newspaper that the presents are wrapped in. You know, that's what you know, how you know what's going on, what the characters say about the Queen doing her speech from a bunker and things like that. There's no other sense of what's going on in the outside world. But it's very interesting that Alex at one point turns, the fresh water appears to be off, it appears to have gone bad, or it's mixed with sewage or something. It's indicated the infrastructure's broken down. The shops are shut, as I've explained, but like Alex turns a tap on, and you see brown water comes out of it, and she smells it, and it smells foul. So the water supply's gone bad. The electricity's it's never explained exactly where the electricity is coming from. If the house has a generator, as some large houses do, especially in hard times, maybe there should have been a scene where Simon and Tony were tinkering with the generators. Is there enough petrol in there? Oh, it's going to last. Things like that. There's an electricity supply, you see. There's a scene where they're all kind of sitting down. Sandra is now very drunk, as well as Alex, and she's flirting with James, and then they start confessing secrets. It's quite funny because Simon is going, oh Jesus, oh God, Simon is doing his usual, oh God, can we just not do this sort of thing? But Sandra confesses that she slept with James. There was obviously like some past between them because of the flirting. Well, James though is sort of like James is like leaning away from her. She's like putting her hand on his, because she keeps calling him Prince Charming, and she calls him that throughout the film. And she hugs him for a very long time, things like that. Oh, and there's and then Tony, of course, is very upset by this. But then Bella confesses that she had sex with Tony just as an experiment. She's of course homosexual, but she wanted to just try out having sex with a man. And she's quite funny because she kind of lightens the mood because, oh Tony, I did you a favour, and Sandra, I did you a favour too, because I brought back his confidence, and that's how I got you two together. Because it turns out that Sophie had a relationship with James before. Sorry, Sandra had a relationship with James before she knew Tony. So but Tony didn't know about this, and apparently Bella and Tony had a fling when he was split up from Sandra or something. It's very soap opera like, but they have this kind of argument, and Alex is sitting quietly playing Scrabble, and she's like arranging words, and then you see the words pedo and liar, and it turns out that then James confesses that, well, Sandra doesn't confess it, James does, that Sandra had a relationship with the headmaster of the school. That's where the pedo thing comes from. Yeah, it's like, one of the biggest themes of this film, I think, is generational differences, generational conflict. It's an overriding theme: children versus adults, young adults versus older adults, and how we change as we grow from children to adults. And as C.S. Lewis said, the stupidest children are the most childish, and the stupidest adults are the most grown up. And I understand that, I really do. I mean, especially the conversation between Art and James. James is like, I'm really dissecting this whole film. This is why it's a complicated film. I had to watch it all this time. Art keeps saying it's not fair because he says, well, homeless people and illegal immigrants, they haven't got their pills. They're going to die. Who's going to hold their hand? Who's going to help them? And he says, it's not fair. And you're a doctor. You're supposed to do something about it. And James is saying, Art, life isn't fair. And James says, oh, but people say that when they don't want to do anything about it. It's an excuse. And you know what? I've had that when I was a kid. I remember clearly several times having conversations like that with my dad, because my dad used to say, well, life ain't fair. I used to say, that's not fair, and he said, well, life ain't fair. Sometimes it would annoy me actually, because this was sometimes when he would make a promise and wouldn't keep it and things like that. He'd just say, well, life ain't fair. And that annoys me. That's a very adult sort of thing to say. To a child, where an adult who essentially has become conditioned to just accept the world as it is, and if someone says, well, the world shouldn't be like this, and they say things like, well, I mean, obviously I have this conversation all the time with people because I'm someone who, I'm one of these. I'm what I suppose what Robert Anton Wilson would call a neophile. I like new things. I'm adventurous. I liked the idea that things could change, and I'm something of a visionary in that respect. Most people are not. Most people are afraid of change. They are neophobes. And not only that, but they become irritated with me when I say, well, maybe it shouldn't be like this. This could be anything from, maybe we don't have to live in, this new world order is here because we're putting up with it and we need to change our minds. Or it could be, another thing that used to annoy people. I used to say things like, well, maybe porters should be proud to be porters. Things like that. At the hospital, I was outspoken at the hospital, which of course got me into trouble, very much so. But this generational conflict is like really the centre of the whole interaction with the characters. I think one of the themes. They do speculate about the afterlife. They think about heaven. I suppose people facing their own death will do this. And Trudy Styler's character, the mother, Nell's mother, actually says, presumably her husband, the father, died, and he says, "Your father's up there waiting for us in heaven. He'll be so pleased to see us all." And but there's no further real explanation of that theme until possibly the very end of the film. Now, I'll come to the very end of the film. I haven't forgotten, because Jam Noise, I think, is wondering when I'm going to get to it, and I will. I just don't want. I want to just check my notes just to see if I haven't left anything out. It says it's sad things. You know, Art says, "I'm not going to take the pill." He begs his father to stay with him. Things like that. Don't take the pill. Oh, it's awful. You know, it is. You see, this is. I don't call this a comedy. I wouldn't call this a comedy. And also, there's a very tragicomic couple of scenes. Because, as I said earlier, Alex gets completely drunk. She's swigging booze from a bottle, and she gets completely rat-arsed. And she collapses drunk on the bed, and Bella comes in and is very upset, trying to wake her up, and thinks she's taken the pill. Wake up, please! And it's quite sad. It's very, very... As I said, Lucy Punch is a fantastic actress. She's definitely, I mean, she's not as famous as Keira Knightley, but she's bloody good. She's a bloody good actress. You know, it's really quite sad. She plays it very well. Wake up, Alex! Please wake up! I can't help tearing up myself when I watch her doing that. Please wake up! And then Alex wakes up, and well, Bella goes and lies on the bed beside her and snoozes, and in her grief. And then Bella wakes up and goes into the toilet and throws up. Oh, sorry, yeah. First of all, I can't remember exactly how it happens, or why they do it. But Bella takes her pill and feeds Alex the pill while she's sort of lying there. So possibly Bella doesn't think she's taken a pill. I mean, it's a bit confusing, that bit. But she sort of puts it in her mouth and then pours water to basically force feed her this pill while she's unconscious. She's actually in a drunken stupor. And then Bella takes the pill. Presumably with some people the pill has a delaying effect. It doesn't act straight away. It takes a while to work. With Tony as well. Tony's like he takes the pill and it works very, very slowly. He says, "I can't feel my legs" at one point. He says, "I can't feel my legs," which indicates it's starting to work, and then he dies. So even though it's painless, it takes a while to work, this pill. And Bella then, after Bella has like force-fed an unconscious Alex this pill, Alex wakes up and goes and throws up. And Bella has taken her pill. They've only got two, and they're both taken. And Bella realizes that Alex has vomited the pill. And Bella has to do this horrible thing. And I say it's very tragicomic. She says they go and dance to some music in the kitchen, and then Bella kills Alex with a knife. And Alex is sitting there, there's this knife in her guts, and she's saying, "Bella, what the fuck? What the fuck?" And Bella's going, "Darling, you puked up the pill." And so Bella's killed Alex because she didn't have her pill. And then Bella then goes, and then dies, and then Alex dies beside her, killed by the knife, not the pill. It's... As I said, that is one of the scenes that was extremely sad. I'm sorry, I don't want to miss my notes. I know I haven't rehearsed this in advance. I don't do that sort of thing. But this, like I said, this generational conflict, this because I'm this the difference between children and adults is really a major theme of this. Yeah, it's I'm just going through this. Sorry, guys, we'll be with you in a second. So that's basically what happens. They all take their pills and they die, and you think that's the end of the film. And then at the very last, and then you see this cloud of poison gas appears, and it like envelops the entire house. There's no reason to think that that poison gas is not real, because the twister which Art encountered when he was running through the woods left him either very we think he's dead and he's got like blood on his face. Um, Either that or unconscious. And so this poison gas envelops the entire house. They've all taken their pills and they're lying on their beds dead. And you see the camera zooms over them all. The camera sort of pans over this scene and there's poignant music. And you think, well, that's obviously the end of the film. But then there's it cuts to the following morning. And you think, that's the point where I thought, what the hell's going on? Because the final scene is very ambiguous about what's actually happened, and it's obviously left to the reader. Sorry, the reader. It's obviously left to the viewer to interpret. It's not conclusive, this film, because the final scene is after the poison gas cloud has passed over, and you assume that the sun is going to rise on a devastated world of broken trees, rather like the road, which is referred to several times in this film. The broken trees and things like that. And like burnt grass and dead animals and things like that, because this has killed everything. But instead, when it's the following day, everything looks normal. The sun rises on a very normal looking Boxing Day, except it snowed in the night. So the sun rises on a white Boxing Day, and there's snow falling. You see the scene where the garden is surrounded by everything looks normal. You see, like there's a like you said, there's a kitchen garden, and Art has his own patch. Art's kale, and you see snow falling on it, and it's a white Boxing Day, and everything looks normal. Nothing's dead. The gas cloud is gone, and it's left behind things. It hasn't made any changes. It's very, very strange. And then it's still recording, and then again, there's a repeat of the previous sequence where the camera is basically panning and cruising over the various dead bodies in the house, exactly like before, except there's daylight now because it's the morning. And the very last scene, it's Nell, Simon, and their children. Nell, Simon, who have died there with Thomas and Hardy, who've taken their pills. And the very very last shot, the camera then closes. It zooms in on Art's face. Art is lying there. He hasn't taken his pill. He's apparently dead from the gas, and he's got blood on his face. It zooms in on his face, and then guess what? He opens his eyes, and then cut to credits. That's the end of the film. And I did actually email Jam Noise about this and wonder what it's all about. What's really going on? Now, I'm not sure what it means, and it's left deliberately ambiguous by the filmmakers. And I quite like films like that. I quite like it when that happens. When there's a kind of things are slightly open-ended. I ended Evan's Land in that way, my first novel. You can, if you want to listen to the audiobook, it's on this channel for free. And I also had a little twist at the end of Rockall, my second novel, which the second is you can get for free as a new edition now for free on Ben's bookcase, panmo-bb.blogspot.co.uk. That's a text version. That's my second novel, which is better than Evan's Land, I think. So a complete conclusion is not always ideal for me, and so this is good because everyone's saying, well, what happened? Because they're all supposed to be dead, either from the pills or from the poison gas. Art is clearly alive. But you don't know because that's the end of the film. So you've got to conclude from that the big gas cloud, even though the twister harmed him, or maybe maybe the bleeding comes from shock because of the horrible scene he witnessed in the car with the dead family. But because that can cause like hemorrhaging and things like that through shock, through blood pressure and things like that. But it's pretty clear that if the poison gas is poisoned, why is Art still alive? And we don't know now. I wondered, and I said this to Jam Noise, I wondered, is the gas cloud actually not really poison? Maybe it's just a big scam by the government, and this is hinted at several times in the script. Is it a massive scam by the government to reduce the population, rather than the old, the old V word, which is what they're doing? I mean, I'm not sure that the filmmakers aren't actually suggesting that. It's not like a conspiratorial film, but if the government, they're obsessed with lowering the population, as I've said before, this is a way to get people to do it. Tell them there's a poison cloud coming. Tell them it's going to kill them in agony so they can just have a quick way out with a poison capsule. Give them more poison capsules and see how many of them actually take it. If Art is still alive, that whatever hit the house, whatever this poison gas thing is actually not poisonous. It's not harmful. It left everything as it was. We see it snowing on the world. Everything's normal. The trees are still there. The plants are still growing. Presumably animals are not harmed. Is it a big scam by the government just to get a few people, just to reduce the population of it? Or, I mean, this doesn't quite fit because, of course, there's no devastation of the natural world. But is Art a zombie now? Has he come back as a zombie? We don't know, but his eyes open. Could he be a zombie? I mean, as Bella was saying to Sandra, I can't. Bella's very protective of Alex and says she couldn't run from zombies. Can you imagine? Oh, no. I've seen the road and there's no fucking way I'm ever living like that. In that wonderful dialogue between them two. Or, there's another possibility here that I conclude, and you can watch this film and make your own mind up, and we'll discuss it in the live stream, which is coming up next. That's the third and final part of this watch party. Or are they all dead, and they're actually, what you see is them arriving in heaven or the spirit world, and the house with the snow around it is actually not. It's not their house in this world. They've reached the world of the Platonic ideal. And that's what you're seeing. They're not in that world. They're not in our world at all anymore. They're all dead in our world, but they've gone to the spirit world. Presumably they'll all wake up at some point and say, "Oh, we're in the spirit world now." And Art is just the first one to do that. That's another possibility. So it's hard to know exactly. Yeah, and maybe the gas converted people to zombies. If you didn't take your pill, it converts you to a zombie. It doesn't harm the natural world. I mean, that's a possibility. But so all the news reports and things were fake. The Queen in the bunker, stuff like that. So generally, I'd say this film I think is pretty good. It's worth watching, but not, as I said, not for Christmas cheer. It's a Christmas film. It's definitely seasonal in theme. Not if you want to inject a bit of Christmas cheer, though. So I say, stick to the Christmas Carol. Celebrate Scrooge turning nice. Don't watch this because it is. I found it quite. As I said, it's grim, it's melancholy, it's dark, and it's the final act. I even though I watched the film 3 times over, I only watched the final act once. That's when they're all taking the pills because I found that very, very distressing. Good acting, very good. As I said, Bella's actress Lucy Punch is fantastic. The kids were good as well. I mean, because many of the main characters are small children, they're very, very good. Perhaps it helps that their mother was the director. Of course, that would have helped. And of course, it's in the credit roll. They have a COVID safety officer. There's a COVID safety. I think there's 2 of the COVID safety team there. And it's interesting that, of course, this was released in 2021. It would have been in production during the lockdown. So they'd have had to have things like checking when people have to take masks off and on and things like that. And you're doing lateral flow tests of all the cast and crew as they arrive at the location or the studio. There's some outdoor. I think it was filmed in a studio, but the outdoor scenes are like at this country house. Apparently, it's called Lake House. It belongs to the Earl of Chichester or something. Because it says in the credits, thanks to the Earl of Chichester. I always watch all the credits because, as you know from Black Panther, very often it's like little Easter eggs pop up in the credits. You find that dystopian fiction often emerges at times of hardship. So it's maybe this is why this film was made during the COVID crisis, because fiction tends to reflect reality. And you do find that when during hard times, a lot of grim dystopian fiction emerges. For example, The Road, which is referred to many times in the script. I've never seen The Road, incidentally. I've seen clips of it, and it looks very, very dismal. But The Road was made after the beginning of it was written first as a book in the aftermath of the War on Terror and the 2008 stock market crash. The film came out just after I think 2009, just after that crash. As the aforementioned On the Beach by Nevil Shute, made in the early Cold War, the 1950s, written in the early Cold War when there were nuclear tests going on that were causing harm to the environment, and again dystopian, hard times dystopian fiction. Yeah. So that's it basically, guys. Watch the film. Let me know what you think happened at the end. If you've got any different ideas to what I suggested happened, let me know. I'd be interested to see if you came up with something new, some different idea of what actually happened at the end, and why the mysterious and open-ended and rather out of place ending. And so what we'll do is we'll have the live stream, which I'll do before Christmas sometime. We're going to have a live stream. This is the third part of the watch party. The review is the second part. The third part is the live stream. And we will we'll get together and have a discussion about it, you and me. I, the presenter, you, the viewer. Will tell me what you think of this film. But do go and watch the film before you take part in the live stream, because I'd be interested to know what you think about it, especially the very strange and contradictory ending scene. So I hope you're all having a lovely time in this season of goodwill. Thanks for watching Her Panwo TV. Hospital Porters, pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order.